Welcome back, everybody. New YouTube video and another YouTube video on Serie A coaches because this is already one of the most important moments of the season where clubs decide the strategy not just for the summer transfer window but also for the entire season that is about to begin already. So the big news coming from Italy today are mostly around three coaches. Massimiliano Allegri, Giampiero Gasperini, and Antonio Conte. And the updates that I'm about to give you will have consequences, of course, on many other Serie A clubs as well. There's a previous video I published yesterday about the timing factor and how important it was for the clubs to move very, very quickly to get the coaches that they wanted because the competition is high, um, not just in Italy but in Europe as well. And there are suggestions that Milan, for example, have been moving really, really quickly with director Iglitare because Tare said a few months ago that Allegri was alongside Conte, one of the best coaches in Italy, and he just proved that because he had contact with Allegri and his representatives over the last few hours. He intensified negotiations with Allegri's camp, and the two parties are now really close to reaching an agreement over a 2-year deal. There are reports that Furlani, the Milan CEO, is also meeting Massimiliano Allegri in person right now in Milan, hoping to finalize an agreement and bring Allegri to Milan. This means the ex-Juventus coach and ex-Milan coach would return to San Siro for the first time in more than 10 years. He was sacked in January 2014 after a 4-3 defeat against Sassuolo. You would remember 4 goals from Domenico Berardi, pretty impressive. Sassuolo were a newly promoted team coached by Eusebio Di Francesco, and there will be a newly promoted team next season as well. Allegri was sacked after that match, replaced by Clarence Seedorf, but Milan were still unable to qualify for Champions League or any other European competition, just like it happened this season with first Paulo Fonseca and then Sergio Conceição completing the job at San Siro, seeing Milan finishing outside a European placement. So if Allegri is appointed, as it seems, as Milan coach, he will start again with uh, clearly a very different team from the one he had over 10 years ago, and with no European competitions, which, as we saw this season with Napoli, could prove to be a pretty good advantage in Serie A. But I mean, overall, the Allegri decision, I think it's quite wise from Milan because last season they were looking for somebody who would even improve Stefano Spioli's playing style, get better results as well. But overall, it was a failure because ultimately they didn't hire somebody who was plug in, basically ready to go for Italian football. What Milan did here was get somebody who knows his stuff, who knows exactly what's going to happen in his team and in this league. So somebody who has great knowledge of the club itself and the league. And it's true that Allegri has been criticized a lot for his playing style. There are Milan supporters who still hasn't forgotten about his last season where he um, dropped Andrea Pirlo to play Mark Van Bommel in central midfield. But of course, this is a very different situation. This is a very, very different Milan. This is a very different Allegri as well, who, in my opinion, has taught pretty well how to work with young players as well during his time at Juventus. I remember an interview where he said that um, Juventus' target, aside from, of course, results on the pitch, was to include 3 players from the next gen, which is the second Juventus team, into the first team every season. And this is exactly what Allegri did. Some of these players developed under him, and he managed to win a trophy last season, winning the Coppa Italia against Atalanta. So it's of course, it's not one of those modern coaches. You won't see tiki taka Milan probably under Massimiliano Allegri, but I'm pretty sure you will see a very solid Milan and a Milan that is pretty similar to the last versions that we saw um, under Sergio Conceição in terms of defensive solidity, especially in terms of not trying to dominate possession at all costs, but sometimes give away the ball to the opponents and try to hurt with counterattacks. I think Leao, for example, would be a tremendous player for Milan under Massimiliano Allegri because he's one of those players that if he understands how to handle the ball and how, I mean, not how to handle the ball, but how to make the right thing consistently through the 90 minutes. If he starts doing that with Allegri, if he has space with counter attacks, Milan are going to be really deadly under Allegri next season. So I think it's a wise decision that Milan had to make because they can afford no more mistakes. They need to get it right next season. They need to qualify at least for the Champions League, and they needed a top tier coach. I mean, again, despite all the criticism, Allegri has won 6 titles in Serie A, even more than Antonio Conte. So he knows his stuff and he knows exactly what he's going to do and what he will need at Milan next season. But Allegri's move to Milan says something pretty interesting about Napoli as well, because if Allegri goes to Milan this quickly, it means that Antonio Conte is likely staying at Napoli. Now, there is still no final agreement or even final meeting between Aurelio De Laurentiis and Antonio Conte, but it's probably happening tomorrow on Friday or Saturday, the latest. But I mean, I've already told you how Napoli had contacted Allegri to possibly replace Antonio Conte, and the fact that Allegri has reached an agreement so quickly with Milan. Of course, he will wait for Napoli as well and see how things develop their end. But the fact that things are moving so quickly between Allegri and Milan means that Antonio Conte is likely to stay at Napoli. There was a report from transfer expert Sasha Tavolieri today saying that even Kevin De Bruyne during negotiations with Napoli was told that Napoli were confident Conte would be staying at the Stadio Maradona next season. And even again, the fact that Kevin De Bruyne is ready to sign for Napoli means that he knows there's a strong project behind it, and that he's not going to waste an year after leaving Manchester City. So I think things are moving very, very quickly for Allegri and Conte, I think, as a consequence. So in this case, for example, I see a potentially troubled situation for Juventus because, of course, Conte was their main target if Tudor had left. And now with Tudor, with Conte possibly staying at Napoli and other coachings linked with the old lady, like, for example, Giampiero Gasperini talking to Roma. They were in Florence. He was in Florence discussing with Florian Ghisolfi and Dan Friedkin today. In this situation, it's clear that Juventus are more likely to keep Igor Tudor, who will coach the team regardless during the Club World Cup. But it's no secret that Juventus would be looking for a different sort of coach. But again, only if they can get a top coach. And Antonio Conte clearly was and clearly is one of the top coaches that Juventus are looking at. But if he ends up staying at Napoli, then I don't see so many Juventus options, especially then, of course, there are many coaches available. There's Jurgen Klopp, there's Zizou Zidane, but we're talking about feasible things here. And Conte was surely a feasible coach because of his past at Juventus, because of his previous experience as a coach and as a midfielder. So if he stays at Napoli, I see Juventus keeping Igor Tudor, to be fair. Gazzetta dello Sport reported that maybe Juventus could go for Roberto Mancini or even Stefano Pioli, but Pioli has been linked with Atalanta if, as it seems, Gasperini goes to Roma. So all things considered, I think that if Conte stays at Napoli, then Juventus will stick with Igor Tudor even beyond the Club World Cup. His contract, Tudor's contract, as I told you before, was extended until 2026 after he qualified for the Champions League with Juventus. And so let's see what will be his approach during the Club World Cup. He has already said that Juventus would need 2 or 3 signings to improve the squad and be ready to challenge for the title starting from next season. Let's see if this will be the case. Let's see also how the executives and directors situation develops at Juventus, because Damien Comolli is arriving as the new CEO probably. Giorgio Chiellini is going to have a new role, and the future of Cristiano Giuntoli is still uncertain. He still has a long-term contract worth 2 million per season. So neither Chiellini nor Comolli would take Giuntoli's spot, but they would work together, trying to create a more united group behind the team that really probably struggle a stronger presence behind the scenes during the current campaign. But at the end of the day, again, Allegri to Milan probably means Conte staying at Napoli, which also means Igor Tudor staying at Juventus. So as of today, these were the latest updates. The very first starting point, which was an official statement, was Bologna officially extending with Vincenzo Italiano, but that was clear since yesterday already. So new contract until 2027. So with Italiano off the market, Milan moved quickly for Massimiliano Allegri, and the domino effect is now continuing and will involve other clubs as well. Let me know your coach's prediction for 2025-26 in Serie A in the comment section, and of course subscribe to the channel because there will be more videos on Serie A and Italian football very, very soon. Thank you very much.